Welcome to the Small Giants Virtual Workshop.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hi, Greg, Kelly. I see people's videos on. That is great. Bonnie, good to see you.
Hello, Greg. Hello, Bob.
If you
Emma.
got our my prep email, the intention for this is not to be a one-way sit and get sage on the stage. We're going to be in conversation. So video on is great. We'll be using the breakout features and being able to get in conversation, because it would be awfully and terribly ironic if we had a virtual connection lab and didn't do any connection whatsoever. That would be a blunder, I would say. In the meantime, so we're at about 1 minute before the technically the start at the top of the hour. I'm going to screen share something that I hope actually will front load some value and some give you an interesting vocabulary word, which is this idea of an unofficial start. So quick head nods if you can see my screen. It says unofficial start. Yes. This is the best thing about Zoom. This is better than in person, is when you ask for consensus, is like everybody becomes a little bobblehead without legs. So unofficial start, I'll explain this idea, but for right now, find the chat in whatever device you're using and just answer the question, what compelled you to say yes to showing up today? Time is very precious and you chose to give yours here right now. And so what compelled you to say yes to showing up? Vanessa, Case, Brian, Kunal, Don, Sarah, you can see most people have videos on. It'll be more normal to have videos on in this than not. And so recognizing that there's a level of vulnerability created because we're all inviting everybody to teleport into our home. And there is a lot of forgiveness going around right now for being in your gym clothes or having a background that doesn't have a nice little plant and a statue of a cat. Like whatever your background is, you're welcome. We'd love to have your videos on and see each other. Beautiful. Especially if you're just joining, we're going to be using the breakout feature and actually being in conversation and connection with each other. And so it will be maybe even more odd not to have your video on by that point. So, and if you are just joining, one more call out, just this unofficial start. Find the chat button. What compelled you to say yes to showing up today? What compelled you to say yes to showing up?
Feel free to scroll, if you've already done that, feel free to scroll through and read what other people have wrote. We'll get a chance to have a conversation about that soon.
It's, you know, one of the things that I love about Zoom, rather than asking the question, how can we make virtual most like being in person? I think that question is old. I think that's like when we were trying to develop Zoom and Skype, et cetera. That's the question we were asking. The question I'm more curious to ask is, what can we do remotely or virtually that we actually can do better virtual than in person? What can we do virtually that we actually can't do in person? And so one of the things that's happening right now is you are all able to speak at the same time in the chat, and then you are all able to listen at scale to each other instantly, right? And so if you consider what just happened in the last literally 3 minutes with this unofficial start that's happening, would have taken, just by a quick estimate, looking at the number of people on the call right now, would have taken us about 2 to 3 hours to all share a little intro to go around in a long, very boring circle. And it would have cost us roughly $100,000 to $200,000 to all fly and be in the same location. And so we just saved 2 hours and $100,000 on Zoom. So no matter how frustrated or overwhelmed with working remotely and virtually you are, a little silver lining there, in that there are ways that can actually save us a bit of time, perhaps money, and plenty of ways that might cost us more money as well. We'll get to that. So one more call out. If you're just joining the unofficial start, checking out the screen, what compelled you to say yes to showing up? Will and myself will be facilitating. The Small Giants crew of Jillian, Rachel, and Hamza will give us a little formal intro in a quick moment, and then we'll get officially started. But the idea, hi Leslie Peters, lovely to see you.
I was thinking that too. And Gemma is here. That's exciting to see Gemma.
Hi.
You know, what's making me excited about this right now is seeing some familiar faces, folks that we've worked with, collaborated with, partnered with in the past, and some new faces, knowing that there's going to be some wonderful connections made during this hour. I'm very much looking forward to this.
Hi, Michelle.
I made it.
Yeah. Good to see you, Michelle. All right. So Will and I will officially start. I want to turn it over to Rachel, though, from Small Giants to give a little hello and welcome, and then we will get officially rolling.
Yes, thank you so much. I agree, it's great. I see some familiar names and faces, but a lot of new ones too. So thank you everybody for joining. And I echo a lot of the things in the chat of people just looking for a connection, especially right now. So we're really excited. Like Chad said, my name is Rachel. I'm with the Small Giants community. You'll see my colleagues, Tensa and Jillian, somewhere on your screen. But for those of you who might not be familiar, we're a community of purpose-driven small business leaders. So leaders who prioritize their people and their purpose, and they're focused on being great companies as opposed to being huge companies that grow at all costs. So the name comes from a book called Small Giants, and it's about companies that run their business this way. If you haven't read it, I might be a little bit partial, but it's a good read. So especially if you have some free time now, I recommend you pick it up. But one of the ways that we bring leaders together is through our annual summit. So we were really excited to have Chad lead our attendees in an interactive session, just because of what's going on in the world right now. As you can imagine, we had to postpone our summit this year, but we're so excited to have Chad and Will still be able to lead us today. So I'll take it, I'll let you guys take it from here, but thank you so much, and we're really excited.
Awesome. All right. Hey, welcome. There is something very funky right now that's happening. So first of all, whether you have been living in Zoom town, and it's like, I feel like Zoom, I know Zoom like the back of my hand, or this is the first time you've been on Zoom, would invite you right now to explore the room. Meaning, when usually our brains are wired when we walk into a physical space, we want to find where are the exits, where's the window. That's our survive brain saying, okay, how do I get out if I need to? Just automatically. And then maybe our thrive brain is saying, okay, where's the comfiest chair, and who's my peeps, and where are my peeps, and can I sit down with them? And so right now in Zoom, we encourage you to look around, find out what happens when you press the reaction button, the thumbs up or the thumbs down. Hi, Robin Funston, lovely to see you. And so play around this room. You've all found the chat for the most part, but just kind of settle in and get comfy here. And to officially start, I'll circle back in a little bit to unpack this unofficial start and give you that as a tool that you can take forth and ruthlessly misinterpret, steal, and apply to your own context. But for right now, Will and I are going to do a teeny tiny intro and framing of who we are in the world, in case you're one for context. And then very quickly, we're going to jump into something we like to call connection before content. And we're going to use the breakout rooms for that. So if you haven't experienced breakout rooms in Zoom, they're awfully cool. And we'll get a flavor of that in a quick moment. So as a quick intro to who we are on the planet, when I was about yay big, this is going to sound like a long story. It's a very short story. When I was about yay big, I had my entire life figured out. I had seen the movie Patch Adams with Robin Williams, who becomes a doctor to really promote the quality of life over quantity. And he just has this amazing way of connecting and really healing people through human connection with others. And so I had my life figured out. I was going to be Patch Adams. And then I took a chemistry class in college and was like, ooh, that might not work out so well. But what I realized was I was still really enamored with the impact that human connection can have, particularly when we're really intentional about it. And so Will and I started an organization called We and Me, and we get to travel around and work with companies and organizations helping make connection easy for them. because we live in a time and a context, even now, even though we have all this extra different time, we live in a time where there's often too much to do in too little time. Does anybody resonate with feeling like they have too much to do in too little time? Just a head nods. Yes, bobbleheads flowing a little bit here. So wanting to make connection really easy. And so that's the framing and the context for here. Some of you who know us are familiar with our work might know Will and I wrote this book, Ask Powerful Questions, Create Conversations That Matter, which is one of the things that we hope to do today, is create a conversation that does matter. And then you may be familiar with our tools. We created a couple card decks and this whole little connection toolkit that's got a whole bunch of ways for organizations and teams to build connection and accelerate that connection in a way that is comfortable for them. So about half of our revenue and work comes from those tools and products being used all over the world in 80+ countries. And then the other part of our revenue comes from actually traveling around, working, speaking, facilitating with groups. We've been leading these virtual connection labs for specific organizations, because if your team is not used to working remotely, you're probably experiencing this very odd thing, which is that everybody's apart and none of the organic connection, conversation, idea, and none of that is happening. And so you got to be really intentional with it. So that's been something that we really enjoyed. We've been leading that long before COVID-19 took over. And so it's been fun that now all of a sudden, like, okay, whoa, how do we connect meaningfully remotely? Because we're filled right now in a world with, the world is filled with heaps and of sips of connection, right? We're getting lots, I don't know if you've noticed this, but there is more information flowing in the world right now than ever before. And so we're getting loads of sips of digital connections. And our intention on this call is to create a gulp of conversation and connection that is synchronous rather than these asynchronous, I send out a little video here, 45 emails here, etc. Okay, I thought that was going to be shorter than it was, but there we go. Will, if you want to share a little bit of who you are in the world, and then we'll jump into this connection before content.
So I think I'm just going to talk about the recent history, right? So like 3 weeks ago, this was all starting to show up and around in my neighborhoods and in my communities and such. And I'm like, everybody's just wigging out too much. We're all living in toxic stress and our amygdala is just getting hijacked. And I said that for about 24 hours and I realized it wasn't very helpful for me and not very empowering. And I said, okay, I'm the connection guy. What am I going to do while we're in this place of physical isolation? And notice I'm not calling it social isolation. And so we got this physical distancing that is required. How can I be the connector? How can how can Chad and I really amplify connection? And so we started offering these places where people could connect online, created a much more empowering context. And I'll just share quickly, after I did that internally and had that shift, I then was at the dinner table and saw one of my children crying because he couldn't go back to school and connect with his kids, right? His peeps. Within 24 hours, he was walking around with the iPad, FaceTiming his classmates, showing them the house and having a conversation with them, and connection was showing up. And so this mental shift caused a shift in my communities. And I'm going to invite that for you, that today I'm declaring all of you connectors. And so we're going to walk you through a process where you can help other people connect. And of course, if you need help in that, we will help guide you in that. But you guys are the heroes in this journey. You're on the front lines, you're making a difference, and we want to be able to help you do that. So we're going to start with something called connection before content. And in a moment, you're going to break off into breakout rooms and have a conversation. We're going to give you a question and have a chat. Let me talk about the listening that we want to have in there. In a moment, Chad's going to show you a quote that we love. When you're invited into this room and the person who is speaking that you are listening to, try not to fix it. Try not to make it better for them. Just try to get how it is the world is occurring for them. So much so that maybe you might even be changed by the words that they are saying. So here's the quote.
So this is, so what we're inviting here is the question, just to prime your brains a little bit, is what is one thing life is teaching you right now? And the intention with this question is to both connect to each other as human beings, create a little space for authenticity, and twofold, to connect to the purpose of why we are actually here, which is the collective brains on this call right now are much smarter than just me and Will. And so me and Will aren't just going to talk at you the whole time. Rather, we want to be able to share. So if that is what people are going to be sharing about, as a framing for listening, if you can read this quote by Alan Alda, oftentimes we have a default to want to listen to fix. We want to listen to add. We want to hear what somebody's learning about, what somebody's answer is. And we say, oh, I got a really cool idea I want to share with you. And in this moment right now, for the next 6 or so minutes that will be in these breakouts, the invitation is purely to listen in a way that may create space for what that other person says to actually change you in the way that you're currently thinking and processing right now. So I'm going to flip back to this question. And in a minute, Hamza's going to split us up into breakouts intentionally of 3 to 4-ish people in the call. The system will automatically push you into these breakout rooms. And then when I give Hamza a signal, she's going to click a timer of close all rooms. And it's going to show up a 2-minute timer for you. And in 2 minutes, the system will automatically rip you all back to this main group. So you don't need to hit come back into the main room. That 2-minute timer is literally just for you to say, for some of you to say, you've been talking too long, give somebody else a chance. And so that 2 minutes, use that 2 minutes to finish up your conversation before we pull you all back. Thinking about this question, what is one thing life is teaching you right now? It is one of the questions that lives in the deck of We Connect cards that I shared with you earlier. And it's one of our favorites, but it's interesting because there's a way that all the questions in the deck, when different things happen in the world, some become more relevant. And this one feels awfully pertinent and appropriate for the time we're in right now. So what is one thing life is teaching you? Think about answering that in 1 to 2 minutes max in your small group. And then we'll pull you all back in about 6 to 8 minutes from now. So Hamza, if you want to start to open up those breakout rooms, that would be great. I'm going to add, without, don't click open rooms yet, Hamza, because
Okay.
what I'm going to do is invite us to, as we're thinking about your own response to that question, I'm going to have us all save the time of introing. Hey, I'm Greg. Hey, I'm Kelly. Hey, I'm Sarah. I'm Michelle. And I'm and like the normal intro. We're going to invite you to just dive into the conversation. But as a way of quickly introducing who's on the call right now, take 10 seconds and go find either a logo of the company that you founded, or created, worked for, are a part of, or some other image or object that represents who you are in the world. So I think a logo creates some simplicity, and I will take a Zoom selfie, and maybe Small Giants crew can send that out as a follow-up after. But 10 seconds, and before we split off into breakout rooms, we're gonna have all hold it up so we can see who's on the call, and then Hamza will click open rooms, and we will all be ported into our own little mini realities. So if you've got your object, if you don't, you can just get your face nice and close to the screen and you'll just stand for you. So on the count of 3, hold your logos up. 1, 2, 3. And taking a Zoom selfie, a Zelfie. That's a little cheeky. I don't think we're going to stick with that. Beautiful. So feel free when you get into your small groups to just say, as you go to share what is life teaching you right now, feel free to say, hey, my first name, and share said logo, just as a quick introduction. Hamza, you can teleport us all now if you would like to. It's kind of crazy. Oh, David Carr. Hello, David Carr. So how many of you just got cut off in the middle of your sentence? So sorry. That is one. Let every conversation that gets cut off be an invitation to continue it later with folks. It is one interesting and potentially frustrating thing that happens from a facilitator perspective. If I was in a room with you at the Small Giants Community Conference in Detroit, and I said, okay, everybody, 1 more minute, that would never happen, right? It's like you gotta pull people away. So I feel all of a sudden like I've been given some sort of power to be able to rip people back from breakouts. But I do also want to honor that there's no perfect time to stop 20 conversations that are happening. So thank you for that.
Chad says we have two jobs, starting conversations and ending conversations. And suddenly mute buttons give us this whole new power that we don't know what to do with. So what struck you about those conversations? We don't need a report out. We don't really need to even know what you talked about, but what struck you about those conversations?
And take a second to ponder that. Take 10 seconds to think about your own response. Just rewind the tape. What struck you about those conversations? You can type it in the chat if you want to. And I'm gonna call out a few names in order, and would love to actually hear some voices share what struck you, just in a sentence or two. What struck you about those conversations? So I typically don't pick randomly in a classroom. I take volunteers, and so let's try to do that here. If you're game to share, toss up your actual hand or your virtual hand. So let's say Robin, and then Kathy. We'll start there, and then Michael. Robin, Kathy, then Michael. What you got for us, Robin? Just a quick sentence or two, snapshot.
It struck me that we all have different situations and resonate with self-care as an important tool.
Yeah, been hearing the phrase mental health Mondays all of a sudden start to pop up when we're working in isolation all the time. Yeah, Kathy.
What struck me was an immediate connection, and that there are other people going through the same thing that I am.
Yeah. There's an irony in that we're mandated to maintain social distance, and yet for one of the first times we're all in a similar boat, not the same boat, because this is impacting everybody very differently, but in a similar boat. And Michael, I lost track of your thumb. There you go.
Oh, I'm right here. The thing that really struck me was, I mean, we all had some similarities in things that we were talking about, but how genuine everybody was really what I appreciated.
I loved hearing that. And Lisa Wise, I just have to ask you to say what struck you, just because we've got the name thing going on.
Yeah, I never see another Wise. It's kind of rare. I love it. I never regret my last name. I think, you know, everybody was being really empathic in their comments and thinking about what their contribution to others needed to be before they were thinking about what the risk to them personally was. And that I think was very heartening.
Loved hearing that.
So Kunal, just because he figured out how to raise his virtual hand, if you want to share what struck you, Kunal.
All right, yeah.
I'll take over.
I think I'm just getting used to the Zoom meetings more often, so I don't know all the virtual tricks as such, so that's why the virtual hand. I think in our group, there are a lot of diversity, and then one of us were having problems, sort of, the voice was not coming through, so we were trying to figure out how to, you know, we were instructing him to either write or, you know, send messages and things like that. But I think overall it came three main points: so connect more meaningfully, and the beauty of creativity, that sort of and being more mindful. So these are the three things I think that came out of our discussion.
Beautiful, beautiful. So I'd love, Will, I see you're about to kick something out. So in a moment, I'll turn it over to you, and then I want to rewind and review. I recognize that for some of you, how to make a connection easier is like, how do I make Zoom a little bit easier? So there's a couple technical questions. This is not a Zoom tutorial because not everybody is using Zoom. And just to step meta for a moment, we'll narrate a couple of the tips and things that we're doing there. So breakouts is a feature that you have to unlock on the back end of Zoom. So you need to go into your meeting settings. It's not necessarily automatically there in your account, but it is open to every account. And then when you break people out, one of the biggest, most valuable hidden settings that exists is when you go to break people out, there's a little options button, and it opens up all of these options to force people into breakouts, to prevent them from joining the main room. You can change the timer from a 2-minute warning to a 15-second warning or a minute warning, etc. So on your own time, play with that. Some of those settings make a huge difference in making virtual connection and breakouts happen smoothly. So if you want to do an all staff with 100 employees, please don't stay on the call with all 100 employees the entire time. I don't say please don't do very often, but there is so many better ways to be able to split into that connection before content using breakouts and then pop back. Will, I saw you wanted to say something, and then I'm gonna rewind us and do a fast forward review before we go into stage 2.
So Chad's going to share a couple of the things that we've done already. I want to get clear about this last one, what we just did. We asked you a question. What is life teaching you right now? Sent you off. You had little mini conversations. We brought you back. We asked what struck you about that. And did you notice something internally happen as you heard other people say what struck you about that? That somewhere inside you found that even though you weren't part of the other conversations, that your conversations were similar enough? Chad, you're sharing the wrong screen. Right now we get to see what's inside your computer's brain.
That's exciting.
And so in order to do that effectively, ask a great question that does 3 things: allows for authenticity, allows for vulnerability, and is connected to purpose. Authenticity, vulnerability, and connected to purpose. And as long as it's got an element where somebody can give a voice and have a choice, giving people voice and choice for connection is really a requirement right now, as we're spending all our time in Zoom town in each other's living rooms, right? There's all these different distractions going on. So making sure that you give chance for voice and choice. We like the what struck you question as a follow-up because it allows the thinkers to communicate that way. It allows feelers to communicate that way, and it doesn't make anybody wrong. And you don't need a report out about what's going on. And then we did that with a popcorn debrief, really just quick, boom, 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 boom. An amazing tool. If you took your first 15 minutes to do that with your teams, your staff, it would fundamentally change how you guys are meeting. Chad, what were the other tools that we started with?
Yeah, so you're seeing the right screen now?
Yes.
So this is just, if I invited you, which I in some way have invited you all over to my house. You're in my house right now. But if I were to actually invite you over, what I'm about to do is just invite you to step into me and Will's shoes as if you were leading the meeting. So all we did so far to create what's happened is we kicked off with this idea of an unofficial start, which I promised to go back to. And that's the idea that this came from this guy, Mark Collard in Australia, who created a company called Playmio.com. And it's the world's largest database of group exercises and stuff. So team development sort of things. He came up with this idea of an unofficial start, which is just acknowledging the dynamic that with any meeting, even virtual meetings, some people show up early, some people show up right on time, and some people show up 5 minutes late. They've got Wi-Fi issues going on. Their commute from the kitchen to the living room took a little bit longer than expected. And so in this context, the unofficial start is something to honor the fact that some people showed up early and something to engage them right away. So we chose to answer a question in a chat, but you all are creative, smart people, and you can come up with a billion variations of the unofficial start. But the idea is something that kicks off right away rather than idly waiting, twiddling thumbs, asking people how their weather is, or talking about what's easiest or the lowest hanging fruit. Doing something that's intentional that gets things started, and it goes into 5 minutes or so after the official start of the meeting. So that happens.
I don't show up this way, Chad?
What?
You mean so I don't have to show up this way?
I lost all my video. Do you have a paper bag on your head?
I do have a paper bag on my head.
So this is something that Will and I realized that is an interesting, now that we're all living in Zoom town, we're developing a culture of video calls, and it's all different depending on what organization you're in, but there is an odd cultural norm in some places to show up with your video turned off, which is, can you imagine showing up to an in-person meeting looking like Will, just kind of lurking in the background? It would be totally unaccepted, right? You'd be kicked out of that meeting instantly. And yet it's accepted and normalized on Zoom. And so one of the things that Will and I try to create is, because I never want to force somebody to put their video on. I don't want to force anybody to do anything. But I do want to give people what Will would say, voice and choice. And so I want to give them the choice to opt in and fully engage. And I want their voice to be heard. I don't want a bunch of passive consumers in my meetings, because that doesn't leave space for contribution and connection to actually happen. And so if you think about, you split up any group, and the current mindset that you're in could be critic, consumer, or contributor, maybe connector after that. So critic, consumer, and contributor. My goal in any meeting, any moment, is to give people enough choice so that they can choose to be contributors and step out of that critical or consumer focused mindset in this way. So that's one of the things that can happen in the unofficial chat. So if you came on earlier, you noticed that as people joined, I said, hey, it's going to be more normal to have your video on here than it will be to have it off, etc. And I recognize that some people are in bathrobes and they're not getting out. And so I honor that. And there's a lot of forgiveness right now going around for gym clothes and kids running around and things like that. Then we did.
I want to interject super quick. You could also just do a scavenger hunt, right? And so who's got a sun in their background? Everybody's looking now and looking at people's faces and looking at their backgrounds. And suddenly Patricia's got, we see the sun in the background. And so just giving people a way to engage what's going on and allow them to connect in that kind of fun way. Somebody's got old movie reels on the wall, and I'm like, ooh, I want to know what that is and what's going on there. And so people asking questions and engaging, suddenly people will be turning on their video to be able to play the game with you. So that's the unofficial start. What was the other thing, Chad?
Yeah, so then we jumped into, set a couple culture norms, jumped into this connection before content, which Will's kind of unpacked, which is really, so screen share again real quick, is really unpacking these three things. Ideally, connection before content is at its simplest level. There are lots of ways to do it. At its simplest level, assuming you don't have a lot of time to prep this, it is a single question that allows whoever the group is to create space for authenticity and vulnerability. And so it connects people to each other, in other words. And then the third thing, which is most often missed when we try to do, quote, connection or team building or something like that, is connection to purpose. Why are we here right now? And so the question, what is life teaching you right now? In part, we're here to connect with each other and to learn from each other, not just from me and Will. And so it's connecting to the purpose of why we're actually here in this moment. And if you can hit those three things with your question, and the amount of time that it takes to prep that, right, can be 60 seconds while you're logging onto Zoom. Like, what is the question that I want to ask this group to kick things off? And one of the reasons that Will and I are choosing to share unofficial start, this idea of connection before content, and then what happened at the end of that connection before content is split off into small groups. And then we did this little what struck you we'd call a popcorn debrief to bring all the micro clicks or connections into one collective, one connected whole. So even if everybody doesn't speak, to hear 4, 5, 6 people say, it was amazing in my group to see that we were all in the same boat, or I can't believe that I learned something from somebody who I worked with for 3 years and had no idea about, etc. Like, those little things have a major impact on things that probably really matter to your business. Like, does somebody quit because they're feeling disengaged? Does somebody contribute to their fullest level? Do they show up to work, and can you trust that they're working while they're remote, rather than the force of you must be on your computer from 9 to 5 every day? What if you can create a culture where you're actually trusting that people are engaged because they can see that you're connected and invested in them? So going a bit quick here, one of the things I didn't mention is if you've got questions as they go, Will and I are intentionally not monitoring the chat really closely, because if I tried to read everything you were saying and facilitate, you would get 50% of me in both capacities. So I'm choosing to be fully present here. And the culture of the chat, feel free, if you've got questions, especially like technical things of how do you do this on Zoom, etc., ask that in the chat. Feel free. In real life, this is one of those things that you can do virtually that you can't do in person. In real life, if there were 12 side conversations going on, I would feel a little bit self-conscious. Is anybody enjoying this? Is anybody appreciating this? In this context, talk to each other. Go ahead, start those side conversations in a way that will serve you and you'll get value in a way that won't be necessarily distracting. So one other just bit to mention there. Whew.
I think it's time for a conversation, Chad.
I think so. And I want to give 22 seconds of breath before that conversation. So you probably noticed we've said the word intention multiple times. If you can see my video screen, not my shared screen right now, can you read that?
I'm willing to know you. I see you. I hear you. I get you. I'm with you.
So I don't know all of you and I don't know all of your businesses, but I bet that if you had a magic wand that you could just wave and make every single one of your employees, every single one of your staff, et cetera, feel like you're willing to know them, you really see them, you hear them, you understand them, you get them, that you'd probably wave that magic wand. And yet that wand doesn't exist. If Will and I ever find it, we'll put an ethical price tag on it and happily sell it to you. But for now, we haven't discovered it. And so this is the framework. So if this is a result, this is an impact. This is our framework for what do I actually do to create each of those levels. So this is, I can send this to the Small Giants crew to send out this afterward. But this is the framework that the book, Ask Powerful Questions, Create Conversations Matter, is structured in. So the pyramid, each chapter begins with a new level of this pyramid to unpack this. But intention, we use that word because we would argue that you cannot create meaningful connection or conversation or even ask good questions unless your intention is immensely clear and includes the needs of the other. And so we shared, and maybe you caught, that our intention here was to help make connection easy for you because we live in a time where there's too much to do in too little time. What I want to do now is take 22 seconds of breath to ask you, what is your main intention for your customers or clients? So what happens in a crisis or a pandemic, I did not mean to put crisis in air quotes. What happens in a crisis or a pandemic is our survive brains flare up. And our survive brains are really good at focusing on who? Me, right? Our survive brains say, let me take care of me. Let me get what's mine. And so if any of us are feeling that, and any of our employees and staff and team are feeling that, that creates an interesting dynamic that doesn't quite align with this idea of creating one collective we that is aligned and moving forward. And so what I'd love to do in the chat is take 22 seconds, and I'm actually going to shut up for once, and take 22 seconds and just answer the question, what is your main intention for your customers or clients? Getting out of that me and into that we, others-centric focus. All right. So if you're still pondering your intention, that's fine. I spend a lot of time pondering my intentions. Knowing that intention influences impact but doesn't control it, right? What we want to do now is jump into some conversations that on a prompt that Will and I have found one of the most valuable prompts in this immediate future, which is, at this few slides to find it. We'll go back to some of that if we got time. So this question, what is one creative possibility or solution that you're excited about right now? So as a way to collaboratively learn from each other, because we are all perhaps operating at full speed in like hyper learning mode. There's more information being put out and consumed. And so right now we want this breakout to be a minute or two of sharing what is one creative possibility or solution that you're excited about right now. And we're going to use the majority of the rest of our time in this conversation. We'll bring you back with about 5 minutes to spare. So that Will and I can wrap up properly in a way that might be useful for you actually to think about wrapping up your own meetings rather than the awkward, like, okay, it's top of the hour, got to go to another meeting, see ya. So we're going to end in a way that's a little bit more intentional and hopefully uplifting. But for now, Rachel, if we can get ready to break people out into groups of 4 to 5 for this. And if you're all okay with it, just a quick vote. I would like to do new breakout rooms with new people, just to show a head nods. Are you okay with that? Meeting some new fresh brains, even if your last group was awesome? Or a head nod, shaking no. I see Dave Carr, you look frustrated, but I think you've been outvoted, my friend. So we're gonna do new groups. So go ahead and recreate new people, new brains, fresh minds, fresh ideas. And you're just answering the question, taking your time to share what is one creative possibility or solution that you're excited about right now.
Back.
How many seconds are we at, Hamza?
Rachel, can you see that? Because I don't have it on my end.
And let's see, 98 seconds.
Wow, excitement. And whoever joined by phone, your body is about to be reunited with your voice. I'm excited for that to happen. For those of you that are on right now, a little fun FYI, if you've joined audio over your phone on Zoom, but video over your computer, when breakout sessions happen, Zoom thinks you're 2 different people and they split you in half.
Oh, okay. So
yeah, and they send you. So for everybody that's on the call right now, just a little fun fact.
You can manage it from behind the scenes, but it's a little tricky.
Awesome.
Welcome back. Welcome back.
Hello, hello, hello. All right.
Raise a number of fingers of number of tips that you got there that you think you might use. 3, 4s, 5s.
Cool.
That's fun.
Just in case it happens to work, I'm going to screen share, and there's a way to actually port sound right through somebody's computer. So when you Zoom share. We'll send out a follow-up with some resources. I hope that actually this brought a little bit of joy to you. And yeah, as a call, if you come to the Small Giants session, I will be speaking, facilitating some in-person connection before content. You'll all get a free deck of We Connect cards. And we also create a virtual version of the deck, which you can use in your own context. So just a little like lo-fi virtual version. If you just want access to some of the questions now to create some connection before content, you're welcome to that. And I'll also send out, Rachel will send out a link to a type form. We mentioned that Will and I are leading these virtual connection labs for other organizations. If you would love to have Will and I, without Hugh, if you would love to have Will and I hop in and facilitate a virtual connection lab in your context, but send me an email. I'm not super hard to find. And yeah, that is it. I told you we're going to end in an uplifting, epic way. This was an uplifting, epic end to a call. Claps all around. Thank you all for being here. Appreciate you all, and hopefully we'll have a chat soon. You'll know how to reach us. Hamza and everybody will send out our info, follow-up videos, stuff like that. Much love.
Okay, well that's it for this one. Check out more Small Giants workshops at smallgiants.org.